The 2023 college football season had some of the best games that we have ever seen in the history of the sport, but these are the top 10 games from this year's season. At number 10, I know this feels like a million years ago, but I put Colorado versus TCU. Do you remember all the hype that went into this game? TCU fresh off their national championship appearance, and Colorado with all of the hype surrounding Deion Sanders and the transfer portal and what that would bring, and man, we were not disappointed in this game at all. In the second half alone, we had 8 touchdowns, and almost every single touchdown was back-to-back. This was a thriller. Colorado ended up winning 45-42. At number 9, I put the game between Michigan and Ohio State. In this picture, you see the end of game where Ryan Day congratulates Sherrone Moore, who is filling in for Jim Harbaugh during his final game suspension from the Big Ten for the alleged sign-stealing investigation. I thought this game was pretty good, but I didn't think it lived up to the 8 games I have in front of it. Overall, though, the game never disappoints. At number 8, I have Baylor versus UCF. Does anybody remember just how absolutely insane this game was? Baylor came back from being down 35-7 in the third quarter against UCF, and they ended up winning 36-35. UCF had a chance to win. They had an amazing scramble on 4th and 5. If you haven't seen the play, go look it up on YouTube. It's just incredible. Number 8, though, Baylor versus UCF. At number 7, we had a little bit of a more high-profile thriller between Ole Miss and LSU. Jackson Dart and Ole Miss came up victorious, and it proved to be a fatal flaw for LSU. They couldn't get past this loss, and it for sure knocked them out of the SEC championship the further that they got along through the season. This was an absolute season-changing game for both LSU and Ole Miss. At number 6, just another wild game between West Virginia and Houston. If you haven't seen this play, this is the Hail Mary that Houston won on against West Virginia. To set up the Hail Mary, West Virginia had the win, but they had an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty against them, which set up Houston to throw the Hail Mary. Just an insane game too. At number 5, we get into the college football playoff between Washington and Texas in the Sugar Bowl. Washington had an absolute thriller against Texas. For the most part, they were in charge of that game. However, Texas's bounced back late in that game, made it a thriller. They ended up winning the very last drive of that game. It all came down to the Washington defense, which didn't receive as much credit as they should, but this was an amazing game. At number 4, I think the SEC championship did not get as much hype as it probably should have, even though it was an amazing game. You see right here, Alabama is back. They got into the college football playoff because of this win. It was a fantastic game, went back and forth all game long, and the winner of this game had a great shot of playing for a national championship. This was an amazing game. I love seeing Nick Saban versus Kirby Smart one last time. But this Washington versus Oregon game was maybe the best Pac-12 game in recent memory. This game really came down to coaching mistakes made by Dan Lanning in Oregon, which handed Washington the win. But it was a 3-point thriller. It went back and forth the entire game long. And I think if Oregon had kicked that field goal going into halftime, they probably would have won this game against Washington. The Red River never fails to shine. You see Oklahoma catching their last touchdown with 12 seconds left against Texas. Dillon Gabriel was absolutely poised in the pocket throwing this pass. It was just an incredible game. You gotta check out the highlights sometime this offseason when you're missing college football. But number 1, between the quality of the game and the storyline and what we know now about that game afterwards, I had to put the Rose Bowl between Alabama and Michigan in the college football playoff. This ended up being Nick Saban's last game. Alabama had one of the craziest runs Alabama has ever had under Nick Saban. An absolute roller coaster of a season that ended up against the best team in college football this year, Michigan, who absolutely dominated against everybody this year, including Ohio State and Penn State. Alabama played them close because Michigan had so many mistakes in that game. I love this game. I'm always going to cherish it. I'm going to remember it for a very long time. But this is my number 1 game of the 2023 season. And if you like this list of the top 10 games in the 2023 and 2024 season, make sure you hit the follow button so you don't miss my top 10 games going into next year's season with conference realignment, the 12-team playoff, and so much more coming. We have a lot to get into for the offseason.